good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever and whenever you are checking us out and tuning in. Welcome to our newest edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. Shout out to our Guatemalan demographic for always tuning in. As always, I'm your host, the coach Nick Vesci. I'm joined by the boy Stephen Komlo, the boy Stephen Vesci. Oh boy, Freudian slip. That's got a smarts Komlo there. The man Stephen Komlo. And
Hello.
This week we are joined by a special guest. Our resident golf expert, Nate the Great Bursack, is here to join us to break down what happened over the weekend.
Wow, top notch production you guys got here. Thanks for having me.
That's all we do here. It's only top notch. Before we get into everything, as always, remember to follow us on social media at WCME_sports. We're on Instagram, X, which was Twitter, Facebook. Check out our website, WCMEsports.com. And also, when our new episodes drop every Wednesday at noon, listen to us on Spotify or tune in on YouTube and watch us. Now, our top catch this week, like I just alluded to, has to be the PGA Championship. It was the second golf major of the year. All right. Not to bury the lead, but Xander Schauffele, former Olympic gold medalist, captured his first major championship this past weekend with a score of minus 21, which was the lowest score to par in major championship history. And it was nice to see Xander win. But for more on this, because us amateur golfers here, we stink. And we like to pretend we know about golf. But Nathan is a actual golf coach, and that's why he is our resident golf expert here to join us. So, Nathan, tell us about it. What happened? Break it down.
Just basic way to put it, dominance from start to finish. I mean, he comes out shooting course record 62 day one and, follows it up with, just day after day of great play and is able to, sink that birdie putt on 18, to really secure his place in, PGA, championship history and really set the tone for the rest of the season leading into the U.S. Open here in June, the Olympics and the Open Championship and just everything that's going to snowball from here on out. But it truly was a dominating performance from start to finish from Xander.
Yeah. I saw 11th wire-to-wire win in PGA Championship history. Did you think his putt was going in on the final hole?
I wanted it to, if that makes sense. Not that I'm, an anti-Bryson guy, but just knowing that Xander, being the type of guy that he is, kind of quietly going about his business, staying out of trouble, and out of the limelight, so to speak. I wanted it to go in just because I was worried that if it didn't, Bryson was going to take it, and then Xander, you wouldn't know when Xander would get another chance. I mean, he's had that gold medal, but I mean, he's been knocking on the door since he joined the tour in 2015. I think I have written down 2015, 2016. But this was his first breakthrough, and it was huge for him.
Yeah, like a Mr. Number 2. Like, yes. How many number 2 finishes does that guy have? How many top 5 finishes does that guy have? And I mean, for the longest time, it's always seemed like that was going to be the story of Xander, was going to be like a guy that's always close but not quite.
Yeah, I mean, since joining the tour in, I want to say it's 2015, or 2016, excuse me, he's had 21 top 25 finishes at major championships.
Just at majors? Damn.
Just at majors.
I'll take that in my lifetime.
And he's played in 28. So, I mean, he's
that's wild.
Knocking on the door. And every time he shows up, he's somebody you got to consider. 13 top 10s, 7 top 5s, 2 third-place finishes, and 2 runner-ups. And these are just at majors. Yeah. So, I mean, he's a guy that competes.
Now, was there something that you saw from him that this week that made you think this result was going to happen, that this would be different from his play? Because I know coming into, like you said, he had all that success without getting that championship. I think I saw he was 2-8 when entering the final round of a tournament with a 54-hole lead. 2-8, which is not a good record. Most people say, I got to close that out, right? And so what was different for him?
I think Quail Hollow really gave him the necessary experience to kind of take stock of where his game was and say, if I'm going to put myself in this position, I got to be able to close. And looking at his final round at Quail Hollow, it's not like he absolutely dropped the ball. Rory just played that much better.
Yeah.
So I think his attitude going into Sunday this past week was just, if I make birdies, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to. Mm-hmm. And you look at his scorecard, and he had one blemish the entire day, which is unheard of in a final round of a major. And then just coupled with the fact that he only made 3 bogeys total the entire week is just absolutely insane. Seeing that some guys like, Scotty Scheffler, number 1 in the world, is shooting 76, I think it was, on day 3, or day 2, excuse me. So yeah, just his level of play was just that much better than everybody else in the field this week.
And we talked about how low to par he was at minus 21. He edged out DeChambeau. DeChambeau finished at minus 20. I think DeChambeau shot final round 7 under, and Xander had to shoot 6 under to get it. There was no room for error, and like you said, that what had been defining him was the error, right? So was there anything from DeChambeau that shocked you? I know he's been on Live. I follow Live. Not everyone follows Live, and he's been great on Live. But is there anything that you're seeing from him that makes it seem like he's gonna, like, another major's inevitable?
Well, you got to point out the obvious. His distance is an absolute weapon. I think 16, he nearly snap hooked it into the trees and got probably the greatest break of the entire tournament I've ever seen. And I thought he was going to lose it right there. Kicks back out in the fairway, and he was still ahead of Schauffele from where Schauffele's tee ball was in the fairway. He's hitting 8 irons into 250-yard par 3s. Like, the man is a monster. And that coming into like a U.S. Open or a British Open where you've got wind and heavy rough and all that stuff, like it allows him to put better clubs in his hand so that he's not hitting, 4 irons into greens like a Jordan Spieth might or a Justin Thomas might or whoever it is, because he's got that distance, and it's an amazing weapon to have. So just that alone, I think, tells you that he's going to continue to be knocking on the door for years to come.
I feel like his short game's improved mightily because he bulked up to like get that distance, but then it was like he couldn't do anything with the distance because he had no touch because he was all like bodybuilder out there. Is this short game, like, am I imagining that? I feel like I've seen him not just like his approaches like with 8 irons, but like, hey, I'm short of the green. How am I going to get this up and down? He looked so comfortable with that, whereas before he seemed uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, short game is fickle in a sense where you can have it all locked in one day, and then the next day you could have, the dreaded, the yips or the shanks or whatever it might be. So it's just, if it's clicking for him now, you hope that he continues to have that success. I mean, you don't ever want anybody to, say, well, I hope, you get the yips or whatever, because that's something I wouldn't even wish on somebody. But if he's having that success now, you would expect him to continue to build on that success. But I wouldn't say it's significantly better or worse than it's been based on what I've seen, because I'm not a really big Live guy, but I know he's had success on Live. So if he's playing better, good for him. But again, it wasn't something that I particularly saw as like a new, interesting wrinkle in his game.
Yeah. Yes, Komlo.
No, sorry. So, I mean, like, on the subject of Bryson, I think there's a couple different factors that are kind of like propelling him to do extra well in these events this year. One is that his exemptions are about to be up. I think isn't next year it could be his last Masters if he doesn't win another one, because I think his exemptions are up in 2025 from his U.S. Open win.
Yeah, but doesn't his finish here is going to qualify him for the Masters next year, right, Nathan?
I don't want to give a definitive answer. I'm not the expert on that, but I do know the Masters does extend invitations. So regardless of if he wins or is able to play, they could extend an invite at any moment. And I would imagine if he continues to have the success that he's having, regardless of if it runs out, they're gonna invite him because he brings people to the course.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that there were a lot of people cheering for him, and I normally was not a big DeChambeau person, but I feel like since he's gone to Live, he's toned down his like idiosyncrasies, like the weird crap that he would do, just almost like annoy people. And I think the team aspect of Live, believe it or not, has benefited him more than any other golfer. He eats it up. His team has been the most successful team, and he seems the most into that. Like everyone else is, John Rahm's kind of like, oh yeah, whatever. Koepka's like, oh yeah, whatever. But DeChambeau freaking loves it. Like he's the biggest cheerleader for his team. So I wonder if like he has a different perspective on the game. That it's not so much about I've got to beat the computer and I've got to prove people wrong. It's I am genuinely enjoying what I'm doing now.
Well, the casual fan also gets a break from his quirks. Like, I mean, that's kind of what I've noticed. He goes out there, I'm like, oh, I forgot about DeChambeau. Look how great he's doing. Oh, he looks much nicer. Like when you watch him week after week, you're like, what's he doing? What's going on with DeChambeau? And then you get a break from him.
Someone stuck a mic in his face this week, and I don't know if you guys saw this or not. I think it might have been someone from like just one of those like random golf websites, and they asked him. Like, you seem a lot different. You seem like you're having a lot more fun. Like, what's going on there? And just like a true like businessman, he plugged his YouTube channel and he said, I'm getting back to basics and realizing that like it's not about money. It's not all about placements, even though when we're talking majors, it kind of is. But he said, I'm having fun doing my YouTube channel. It keeps me centered. It keeps me grounded, and it keeps me reminded that like this is as much for the people watching and the people that we're entertaining that it is that it is for me too. And I thought that was such a refreshing take because that dude does post a lot on his YouTube page. I'll be honest, I'm a subscriber. I watch the videos and like the collaborations he does with people like Grant Horvat, Micah Morris, Martin, was it a Borgmeyer, the other long drive guy. He does a lot of YouTube stuff, and it's kind of refreshing to see that like not only is he like weekend to weekend tournaments, live events, majors, but like during the week he's also collaborating and growing the content creator sphere too. So I honestly think he's just having the time of his life right now.
Yeah, I mean, part of that could just be him maturing. I mean, it feels like
we haven't seen any goofy hats lately.
Well, that, and he's making comments like, Augusta National is a par 68 for me or whatever it is, and he's maturing.
Jesus,
you guys don't remember that? Oh, how's that?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
And then he proceeds to miss the cut by like 7 strokes. But and that's when everybody learned that Augusta National is a living, breathing thing that doesn't like to be disrespected. But I mean, he did 2 things this week that definitely showed me he's turned this corner, like you guys said. The first was he tossed the golf ball to the kid, and the older gentleman awesome. Got it, and he stopped and he called the guy out, and it was like, okay, like I can respect that.
That was so cool.
And then after he learned that Schauffele won, he went over and shook his hand. And I feel as though the younger, immature Bryson would have just been like, I'm upset, I'm going to take my ball and go home. But I think in both of those instances, we're seeing that, hey, these live guys are, realizing and understanding that, hey, it like you said, it's not just about the money. It's about, being around the guys and experiencing what just the game of golf has to offer for everybody. And if that's, with live, that's great. If it's with the PGA Tour, that's great. And if there's somewhere down the road that they can, become one cohesive unit, that's great as well. But yeah, he's definitely a better man than what I've seen in the past from him.
Yeah, like I said, you would think if he keeps this up the next Ryder Cup, you would think whoever is the captain of that has to strongly consider him regardless of results, because he's, this is now 2 majors in 1 year. He's contended, played really well. He shot a 58 in the fall. So he's on that level of, what do I look for? He's got past experience. So you would think things are trending up for him.
He did say the schedule of live gives him a lot more rest time and a lot more time to focus on the majors, which he got worn down in the past. So now he's really dialed in. He seems to be like the only psychopath on LIV that's really just getting after it for these majors. Like the other, I feel like DJ just doesn't. He's like, yeah, I got a lot of money. I'm gonna show up, have some fun.
Koepka's the other one. I don't know
Koepka's the other one, yeah.
Tuned into Full Swing, but he makes it very clear, and Jenna Sims makes it very clear in season 2 that like when majors comes around, he's all business. But yeah, those two, they live for the majors. They eat, breathe, and sleep the majors.
Yeah. Speaking of just changing gears here, for talk about a couple other major champions who were in the field that were up there. Going to go to Shane Lowry for a second because we talked about how Xander in his first round tied the major record with a 62. And then in the third round, Lowry fired a 62, which gave us, the viewers, 4 rounds of 62 in majors in the past 2 years, because Xander did it last year at LACC for the U.S. Open, and so did Ricky, Slick Rick Fowler, did it at LACC. So now there's been 5 total rounds of 62 in a major. We've seen 4 in the last 2 years. Is there a reason we're seeing that, Nathan, like that, such a outlier type thing? Is it the golf courses? Is it the style of play that we're seeing? Is it the training? And now they're all not just fat, Lowry excluded.
Oh, that's not fair. Lowry didn't deserve that. You don't. He doesn't need
too many pints of Guinness.
Well, I guess I can cancel the announcement. Shane Lowry no longer joining us next week.
Hey, just remember, John Daly told Tiger Woods, you can't pull muscle. And that's why he never worried about going to the gym.
Can't pull fat.
Because you can't pull fat. Can't pull fat. But to answer your question, I don't know if there's something you could just pinpoint as the reason. I mean, when you watch these majors, you see the lies that they're hitting out of, the tight fairways. LACC last year was brutal. Just how quick the ball is rolling off these greens and the landing areas and whatnot. I think you just kind of have to consider that these guys do this for a living, and they are very good at what they do. And even the pros that showed up, the teaching pros for the PGA of America that were there this weekend, the one guy that made the cut and was the low pro, drove home and shot a bogey 363 the next day in like an event that he was playing in to like
that
win
was
the
such
event.
A good storyline.
And it's like, yeah, these guys, like the tagline, these guys are good. Like it holds up. Is it the fitness? Maybe. Is it the training? Maybe. I think it's just on any given day, these guys are going to go out and play phenomenal. And I mean, you saw, and it could be Lowry, it could be, and I'm going to butcher this man's name because I don't follow him, Burmeister. Just these guys that come out, of nowhere and just tear it up for a week, and then you don't hear from them again. Just it's that difficult out there on tour.
Could it be a mindset thing? Whereas in the past, and we heard this from our dads, like you're almost kind of being cautious on the golf course. You don't want to get yourself in trouble. You don't want to take the aggressive lie because there's a risk with that. You're going to take the safe lie. Are guys saying now more than ever, maybe because of Tiger, because Tiger is so aggressive, we're kind of going right at it. There's no let me try to lay up here. We're going at it, and then the reward is paying off because they're now that good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely becoming more of a statistical game. Now more than ever, even at the high school level, we're looking at analytics in terms of, what's your miss radius, what are the holes that you attack, what are the holes that you lay back on. And I think guys are now using this information and realizing the value that it holds after a couple of guys like Bryson being the absolute, nut job lunatic that he is with stats, and Fitzpatrick shot charting every single one of his shots that he's ever hit. I mean, I think guys are starting to realize that there is a benefit to this. And they're realizing that, hey, take an example, hole number 6 this past week being the hardest hole, a par 4. You would never think, par 4 can't be the hardest hole. But you look at it and it's, you're taking the longest club out of just about every guy's bag for the week, and then you're making them hit a long iron into a green, and all the pins are tucked away behind the trap that was in the front of the green there. So, I mean, you're forcing guys to make decisions that they don't have to make on a daily basis at a Rocket Mortgage Classic or a Harbor Town at, middle of April, whatever it is. They're being forced to take these risks, like you said, but they're calculated risks. And that's probably why nobody went for the green on 13, the short drivable par 4 with the island green. One guy did, it paid off, but
yeah.
Bryson, being as long as he didn't go for it once. And I don't know if you guys heard on the announcers were even saying, like, nobody in practice rounds were even thinking about doing this because they know that they can hit a 5-iron down to the landing area and have a short wedge in. And that's what they want. So it's a combination of a lot of things that are allowing these guys week in and week out to post career bests and, really stump the minds at the PGA Tour and these courses and USGA on how do we set up these courses to prevent people from playing well.
Do you think we're going to see different courses being used for majors? Because I know I saw something that said that Valhalla may not get another major after this. And like last year, LACC, we brought them up. They hadn't hosted a major in God knows how long. Do you think we're going to start seeing, some different courses as opposed to like your Pinehurst, your Pebble Beach, your Oak Hills, like something different?
Well, you're always going to have the favorites, right? So you're always going to try to find time to play the Pinehursts, the Pebble Beaches, the ones that
Sawgrasses,
are fan favorites. Yeah, Sawgrass, all the fan favorites. You're going to pencil those in. I think what it comes down to is, one, can the course actually host the mass volumes amount of people that are going to show up? Two, are courses really allowing themselves to be shut down essentially leading up into the event? And then three, what does it take for the course to get back to playing shape afterwards? So when you look at a course like LACC last year, they have a very, I don't want to say small membership because I don't think they've ever shared a number, but a lot of the pros were saying that they couldn't even get practice rounds out there until like the week of like practice rounds. Like they couldn't get a hold of any members to play out there. And it's just, you got to find that nice balance between all of those variables so that courses can host and tournaments can get played. And Valhalla might just be what worked out this year. It could have been planned from years in advance. That's something that the USGA and PGA Tour kind of keep to themselves, and they announce it and that's it. But I think you also have to look at and understand that outside of just this 1 week, these courses have to run a business as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I never thought about that, of like the economic impact of, like you said, you're kind of shutting yourself down. Like I kind of know from experience, our boy David down there with his wife Bailey in Jacksonville, they got married at Sawgrass, and there was still the bleachers from the players, and they got married first week in April, and the players was 3 some weeks ago, and there was still scaffolding and things they were having to take down from one tournament from 1 week. So it makes sense of what club has the ability to do this, that they've got the stores of money that can shut down for like a month.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. It's funny you bring that up because I heard rumors that Live Golf, because they just announced, like, what was their big event that they're hosting in? Was it Chicago or Detroit?
Is it the team Chicago team championship? I think
that's what it was, the team championship. Well, so like they kind of announced that last minute because they were struggling to lock a course down, and it's, for all intents and purposes, it's pretty much just like a local muni up there. And so the rumor that was going around after that was, Live Golf didn't really like the predicament that they were in with their like team championship. So the rumors were that they were going to be purchasing courses. And so essentially, like, instead of kind of like how the PGA does it, is like having their contracts and their obligations to like their rotation of courses for different events, Live Golf is approaching it as, we're going to make an investment and we're going to purchase courses all around the globe. And this would be like the South Africans' home course. This would be the Australians' home course. And that way we don't have to worry about possibly not being able to play there. And so, I think that's just an interesting idea, because when you think about it from a business perspective, like Nathan was talking about, having like an owned course. Like imagine if the PGA Tour owned the courses that they were playing. I think that opens it up for so many like unique possibilities and business ventures, and it takes a big like risk factor, I think, out of it for other country clubs, right? Like TPC Scottsdale wouldn't have to worry about having the big like dead squares on 16 for the other 6 months of the year that after the waste management, right? So I think that would be an interesting thing to see. I'd love to see something like that. I'd go play a PGA owned course.
Yeah, and you're gonna have issues, regardless of what you do. But I think the PGA Tour, you got to remember too, is a player-run organization. So, like, yeah, you've got Jay Monahan and the guys at the top, but it's really like the guys like Rory, Tiger, JT, and everybody that's actually playing in the events that are pulling the strings.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they will get into the whole purchasing course realm, like you said, Komlo. That would be phenomenal. It would be great to walk into a clubhouse or an event somewhere and you just have merch for the Boston whatever team that Rory's got coming up in his new league with Tiger and whatnot. But yeah, it's a different realm when you're playing with the money that the guys on the Lift Tour are playing with.
Oh yeah, they're playing with, they're printing their own.
Yeah. Must be nice. Just a couple last thoughts on the PGA Championship from Valhalla. Rounding out your top 10, we had Victor Hovland, who kind of came out of nowhere. He was not in form leading up to this, but was phenomenal, especially the last couple of days this week. I believe he finished third.
Outright.
Solo third, sorry. Colin Morikawa finished tied for fourth at -15 with Thomas Dietrich, who, for finishing tied for fourth, they may have shown him hit 3 shots all weekend, which is what a pet peeve, like a bone to pick. What really grinds my gears is the coverage that they sometimes use on these tournaments where a guy like Dietrich, you're not even going to show him at all. And he finished tied for fourth at 15 under with Morikawa. You've had, Scotty Scheffler, after he was arrested, somehow still finished tied for 8th at 13 under. He was tied with Billy Horschel, another one. I didn't see him at a single shot. Somehow Billy Horschel finished in the top 10 of this event. Justin Thomas, who they did show a lot, but rightfully so. It's his home course, his hometown, right? And Bob McIntyre from Scotland finished top 10, the lefty. And defending champ Brooks Koepka finished T26 at -9. Really, he had a bad round 3, and that kind of cost him his chances to contend. Out of those guys, anyone that caught your eye, Nathan, that you kind of stood out to you, like where'd this guy come from? What was going on here?
Hovland won, like you said, not really somebody that you thought was in great form, but just watching him hit some of those shots on Sunday, making a push, was just phenomenal. I mean, he's hitting some shots playing with Bryson. I believe he played with Bryson.
It was so cool seeing them paired together.
It was just like, it reminded me of Rory and Patrick Reed from the Ryder Cup years ago. Like, just they would answer one another back. It was just back and forth, and it was like one of these guys is going to be the one that wins it. And Schauffele is going to play well, but he's going to not win because these other guys are phenomenal. And then, like you said, JT really pulling it together at the right time after he's kind of had a shaky start to the year. And to be honest, no shade to Bob McIntyre, but I had no idea who that was when they were showing him on TV. But good for Bob McIntyre. Yeah, I mean, anytime you have somebody make a name for themselves in a tournament like this, it's great to see.
He's a former Ryder Cup. He was in the Ryder Cup team last year. He lefty. Only the third person ever to play at lefty. I think him, Brian Harmon, and Mickelson are it.
Well, now that you say that, I recognize the name. But at the time I'm watching it, I'm like, who is this guy? Like, I'm sorry.
Who the hell is Happy Gilmore?
Again, I having not watched a lot of golf this year, it was a little bit of an eye opener for me to kind of see his name climb up the leaderboard. But I did love that they quickly started calling him Bobby throughout the broadcast.
Yes.
That was a nice little touch. So, but besides that, I mean, these guys are good. I mean, week in, week out, these guys are good.
Is Hovland now? Does he have the mantle as best current player without a major? Because Schauffele, it felt like that was what was getting pinned on him. Because it was Ricky for a while, but then since Ricky fell off, he's had kind of a little renaissance, but he's still not like how good Ricky was before. It felt like Xander was carrying that weight. Does it now go to Hovland?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a big Sahith Theegala fan.
Nice.
I think you got to throw him in that conversation. The way he's played since coming on tour,
even as young as he is.
Absolutely. He's kind of one of those guys that makes his way to the top of a leaderboard, and you're kind of scratching your head as like, when is he going to break through? I think he's a name you got to keep an eye on. And then you've got other guys like, let me see if I can find some of the other names that I've written down up here.
Max Homa doesn't have a major.
Yeah, Tom Kim, I like that one.
Tom Kim,
that's a good
Max
one.
Homa, yeah, and I mean everybody loves Max because his internet presence, which he remains undefeated.
It's so funny, dude.
But yeah, I mean, I think you can't go wrong with any one of those guys. And obviously, Ricky had some resurgence last year, so you hope that he has that success again. But your guess is as good as mine. Who's going to be the next guy to break through?
Mm-hmm. All right, final thoughts from the week that was at the PGA.
Absolute dominance. I was pretty proud of this one that I came up with, being the English teacher that I am. The LIV golfers lived up to their hype for the week.
Do you have a didn't Komlo? Is there some sound there?
Yeah, hold on, give me 1 second. Yeah, go ahead. Say that one more time. We can fix it in post. Run it back.
We'll fix it in post.
So yeah, so the first thing, the LIV golfers lived up to the hype this week.
Perfect. Cue the lasers. This is just what it's going to turn into.
This is good radio.
Yeah, but I mean, the LIV guys, they showed up, they showed out. 10 out of 16 made the cut. John Rahm disappoints, and quick shout out to the two PGA professionals in Virginia for participating: Larkin Gross out of Westwood in Vienna, and Josh Bate in Benetiera down outside of Richmond. So shout out.
Ooh, that's a fun course.
Yeah.
Those two gentlemen did not make the cut, but if you followed them at all during their qualifying round in Texas, it was phenomenal. Larkin made an eagle on the last hole to clinch his spot. And his wife works at Creighton Farms, so I'm always rooting for him whenever he's playing. So
nice.
Those guys showed up, showed out, and it was one heck of a major to watch. Can't wait to see the U.S. and the Open down the road.
Yeah, I love it. Like Nathan said, next major we got coming up is Father's Day weekend, the U.S. Open being held at Pinehurst.
Love you, Dad.
Yep. And we'll get to there in a second. But Nathan, thank you for coming on. Great to see you. Great to hear your perspective on some of these things that, we, as, schmucks out there hacking it up, may not necessarily notice or appreciate. But, hey, as always, thanks, man. Love it.
Yeah, let's clap it up for Nathan. Clap it up for Nathan.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me. U.S. Open is at Pinehurst. So pay attention to see how those turtleback greens hold up. So something to keep an eye on looking forward.
I love it. Thank you, Nathan. We will see you after that next major. Again, that is our resident golf expert, Nate the Great Bursack. Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks again, Nathan.
Fellas.
All right. Now that we're done with our second major of the year, we're going to move a push on and head to the playoffs. Playoffs. Not golf playoffs, but as we should know, we're in the thralls of the NHL and the NBA playoffs going on right now. We just had our second round, or what they now call the conference semifinals, wrapped up. Now we're at our final four teams, so our conference finals for each league, right? So just quick updates. Starting over the NHL, we had the Rangers. They defeated the Hurricanes in 6 games. after they're up 3-0 in that series, they went and laid an egg in games 4 and 5. And then in game 6, they were laying an egg for basically the entire time until a guy named Chris Kreider showed up. And Chris Kreider, who has the most goals in playoff history for the New York Rangers, which is remarkable, he netted a natural hat trick in that final stanza to put the Rangers up. And it was amazing because it happened kind of quick. And you were just like, is that Kreider again? Was that Kreider again? Are you kidding me?
What I love about Kreider is that the way that game was going, there was every now and then certain athletes have this refusal to lose and say, I'm going to do something about this to win. Having him get the natural hat trick didn't surprise me at all. Being Kreider, I was like, yep, that makes sense. He has a refusal to lose and said, I need to step up. And when no one, and it gets the whole team going, it gets everyone juiced. But that was a single-handed effort, which is hard to say in hockey. That's probably the biggest team sport as far as the puck getting shared, like ball or puck getting shared around and never gets stagnant. It's never stuck because it can't be. To have him score a natural hat trick, I thought was special. And certain types of athletes have that ability to refuse to lose, and he's one of them.
Yeah, I think he's one of the few guys on that team that, like, you really can't ever say that he takes a shift off. I think that every time that Kreider's on the ice, he is doing something impactful to tilt the ice in their direction. And when his team needed him most, he answered the call and stepped up and in the biggest way possible. I mean, he literally took the other guys on the roster, put them in a backpack, threw it over his shoulder, and walked them to the next round.
Yeah, like Steve said, there's no one else on that team that would have done it. No one else. And when you look at the company he's in terms of Rangers lore, there only be 2 other guys who have netted a playoff hat trick in Rangers history. It's 2 guys by the name of Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. And Messier's
were they good?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Numbers 1 and 3 all time in career points. But Messier's hat trick was a third period hat trick as well during the guarantee game when he guaranteed a win over the Devils in Game 6 of the '94 Eastern Conference Finals. Again, like you said, no one else on that team would have stepped up. As great as your Stefan Matteaus and the great Eddie Olczyk out there, it was going to be Messier or no one else was going to score a hat trick like that. And you kind of get that feel with Kreider, even though you may not say Kreider is the best player on the team, he is their most impactful guy. He's the guy
one that Rangers fans pray to.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that, he's so beloved by Rangers fans. They went to his house to throw hats on his lawn after the game because they couldn't throw him on the ice because the game was in Carolina. So thought that was kind of cool. Chris Kreider cool. Kind of building more of a Rangers reputation and putting his stamp on that franchise. And if he could lead them to a championship, he'll be in that same breath as the Brian Leetches, the Mike Richters, the Mark Messiers, the Lundqvists of the world who've graced that. The Jean Rattels, I believe, another old-time name there. But those guys who have graced that franchise whose numbers are up in the rafters, he would be in that same conversation. So the Rangers advance to the Eastern Conference Finals. They will take on the Florida Panthers, getting there for the second straight year. Panthers dispatched the Bruins in the 6 games. Game 6, Gustav Forsling, of all people, who played a great game out of nowhere, which kind of shows the depth that Florida has, scored the game winner with about a minute 30 left in regulation to take a 2-1 win in that series. So Florida will go against New York for the Eastern Conference Finals in hockey. On the west side, you had the Dallas Stars defeat the Avalanche in 6 games. We kind of talked about them last week of how they have so much talent and it's deep mix between veterans and young guys, and that kind of showed in that series, and especially from the guy who hit the game winner in Game 6. So Game 6 for that series went to double overtime, and former Avalanche player Matt Duchene scored the game winner for Dallas in double overtime, and that came on the heels of a OT winner getting disallowed because he was called for goalie interference. So kind of a nice comeback there, and kind of that full circle, if you will, like Komlo was talking about before, of the these veteran guys who we as hockey fans have watched forever. And Matt Duchene, if we remember, was like one of the up-and-coming stars of the league. Like, he was a can't-miss dude. And
oh, yeah.
He's somehow bounced around, and it's kind of poetic justice, really, to see him on the Stars team, buried kind of down there on their depth chart, if you will, make the series clinching goal. Thought that was
cool. I had a buddy that was at that game out at the I think it's still the Pepsi Center, out in Colorado. He was at the game, and like he said that the air was just so thick in there with just Colorado fans hoping. And then he said when Duchene scored, you could just feel just everything just shatter. It was almost like everyone was like, why did it have to be Duchene?
Of right? All people.
Yeah, because I think like Colorado fans, I think they have a hard time seeing like former players in other sweaters play against them and have success.
Yeah,
that was kind of the tone when Kemper came to DC after Colorado won their Stanley Cup. Right, he was their goalie, and didn't really do as well here as he did there. And I think Colorado fans were kind of like, like, we got the less milk out of that cow. Like,
is that a saying?
It is now.
It is now. Thank you.
Welcome to the new title of our episode.
It is
the last milk of the cow.
Oh boy. This is good radio. The aforementioned Dallas Stars, they will take on the Edmonton Oilers in the Western Conference Finals. They took out the Vancouver Canucks in 7 games. They were able to kind of stave them off in that series, especially at the end. They were up 3-0 for you soccer fans in that game. Let Vancouver come back, and they were able to hold that off. So recap in the hockey world, you got Rangers, Panthers in the East, Stars, Oilers in the West.
It was a Besserless Vancouver team too, and how many spots in that game, if you stayed up to watch it, did Vancouver need Besser? Like, even in like the dying like minute and a half, like, so Vancouver gets 2 goals late in the third, and it gets to the point where they pull their goal, where they pull Seelov, and they just could not get into the zone. And like, they talked about it, the announcers talked about it all game. Besser's out. They found a blood clot in his leg after game 5. Yeah, after game 5. And there were just so many spots in that game where it was like, man, we talked about it last week especially me, I shouted him out on my list. He's a guy that they could depend on, lean on, and he consistently was producing for them. And man, I think him not being there was a real big blow to that team.
Yeah. There was another guy on one of your lists. I think it was Nick's. Seelov's was outstanding.
Yes, he was.
That he had a couple saves that were
standing on his head.
Yes, it were ridiculous. But there was just, I think it was like 24 shots to 5. I think is what I saw when I went to sleep. And I was looking. I was like, yeah, I know shots aren't always the telltale of everything for hockey. It's, sometimes it's quality of shots, it's scoring chances. Like, if you hit the post, it's not technically a shot on goal.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's 24 to 5, that seems to be of a problem in a game 7.
Well, Vancouver, I think, had either the lowest or the second lowest average shots per game. I think they only averaged like 21, 22 shots per game this year.
But you can't let Seelovs get peppered like that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue.
I'm not saying that it's. I'm saying that, like, somehow they were able to find credit while not producing shots on net. But I think, like, with a stat line like that, it's you're only going to go so far.
Yeah.
Right? Because pucks to the net will win games, right? It's garbage time. You've got to get pucks to the net and see what happens, right? A chance rebound, a trickle through, something's going to happen. Like, if you're not getting pucks to the net, I mean, you're just eliminating so many possibilities for yourself.
Yeah, that's why they say it's never a bad play to get the puck to the net. Especially in the playoffs, it's never a bad play.
100%. 100%.
Moving on to the NBA, and we can come back to some stuff if we need to here in a second. But moving on to the NBA, in the East, you had the Boston Celtics, the number 1 overall seed in all of the NBA. They dispatched the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games. The Cavaliers were without Donovan Mitchell, their star, and that hurt. I mean, they're not built to be able to withstand a loss like that. They don't have the pieces yet. They're too young. And even though Boston was out without Porzingis, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Sam Hauser from
UVA. Sorry, I was trying to open a beer and it didn't want the sound on there. You caught me at a bad time.
We'll get that.
Just don't mute anymore.
That's dead. That dead air going. Yes, Sam Hauser from Virginia. Peyton Pritchard and the ageless one, Al Horford.
Peyton Pritchard from Oregon.
Yes, he is. They just looked too comfortable. It's kind of like, this is over before it started. Good for you for not getting swept, Cleveland. So they'll make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They're going to take
Okay, before you go to the next one,
yeah.
Boston has the best odds to win. Are they thinking Porzingis is coming back?
Yes.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay?
I heard he was a maybe for Game 2.
Yeah,
they're looking at Game 2 of the Conference Finals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. With him back there, I think you could very well say heavy favorites based off record wise and track record throughout the season and the track record of the individual players, because all those guys on that team, no one's a real young buck, but no one's old except for Al Horford. Everyone on there's just got a lot of playoff experience, but and are kind of in their primes. So I think that's something beneficial for them based off for their play. But don't sleep on their next opponent, which is the Indiana Pacers, who they were able to come back in the series against the New York Knicks, win in 7 games. Pacers were the 6th seed, so they had to pull 2 upsets, secondly beating Milwaukee and then New York. But I would argue it's not necessarily that an upset, because we talked about this before. The difference between the number 2 seed in the East and the number 8 seed was like 3 or 4 games. So by Indiana being the 6th seed, they are comparable to all those other teams. And don't forget, during the in-season tournament this year, they made it to the finals and lost to LA, I believe. The Lakers won that, and the Pacers, or did the Pacers win it? I forget. You're gonna have to fact check me on that. But I know the Pacers got to that. So they showed their ability in these kind of not necessarily winner-take-all scenarios, but like elimination-type games and playoff-type scenarios. They proved that they have what it takes. But they took the Knicks out in Game 7. The biggest storyline, though, I think, from that series were the Knicks injuries. My God, I think I wrote down, I may be missing some guys who got hurt. Mitchell Robinson, the center, was hurt before the series started, so he was a backup center to Hartenstein. OG Anunoby was playing so well, and then got hurt in Game 3, missed the rest of the series. Jalen Brunson broke his hand at some point in the last game or two. Josh Hart, who we talked about being so impactful, pulled some adductor muscle or something core-wise where he was limited, especially when he was being undersized and having to guard like Miles Turner and Siakam at some points. You can't do that if you got half a torso, right? And so those injuries hampered them so much.
He has a full torso, just limited.
It's half a torso.
I think that injury for him was, I mean, that for a basketball player, especially, for someone who plays the way he does, that injury had to be so painful and so difficult to play with. I mean, the physicality, just the conditioning, the jumping, trying to, get some boards and stuff just against bigger guys, to have an ab muscle get probably ripped is brutal.
Yeah. And again, don't sleep on the Pacers. They'll take on the Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. And the Pacers, one of their biggest strengths is points in the paint. And without Porzingis, the Celtics don't really have a lot there. We talked about Al Horford kind of being the starting center, and you have guys like Hauser and Luke Cornett coming in. really aren't that proven good players, but they're not Pascal Siakam, who I said last week might be the best power forward in the NBA. They're no Miles Turner, who is a bona fide scorer of the basketball and a two-way player, right? They're not Obi Toppin, who is electric athletically and a huge impact off the bench. So that, to me, could be something to watch for in the series, is how does the Pacers, especially Rick Carlisle, great underrated head coach, Rick Carlisle from...
Is he from UVA?
From UVA, yes. Played in the 80s Ralph Sampson era. But how Rick Carlisle tries to exploit some of his team's strengths against the possible weaknesses of the Celtics, because that's really their only shot, because they are in a lot of ways overmatched because of the just efficiency of scoring that Boston presents.
There's also something to be said about going through the grind of a series they just went through against New York to then try to... Boston's rested. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Indiana steals one of these, but I think it's one of these first two games. But as the series goes on, I just think it's going to be so difficult for Indiana to kind of get their physicality back, get everything back to where they were. I think they're going to be a little bit worn down.
But we brought up the hungriness before, just to play devil's advocate. We talked about teams being hungry. Indiana was hungry as hell for games 6 and 7. And I do think a lot of that credit goes to Rick Carlisle and the mindset that he's coached and put his team through. And that will be their, yes, like I said, they can have an inside matchup that may benefit them. But what's going to carry them if they got a shot to upset Boston is that mindset, the hungriness, because like you said, it does seem like you could say their good fortune may run out. You're going to meet a team who's rested and are missing one guy who they may get back, and you just went through this knockdown, drag-out fight with the Knicks. So
yeah, it just felt like that series just felt draining. Like, even if the Knicks got through, I mean, the Knicks were so banged up, but even if they got through, it'd be the same thing. Whichever team was coming out of the Indiana-New York matchup, I feel like is just so drained mentally and physically.
Yeah. Now, moving out west, the Mavericks, they took out the number 1 seed Thunder in 6 games. Mavericks led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, the big names, and give a shout out to your boy PJ Washington. Boy, you're all over it. He so impactful, especially at the end of the series clinching game. I don't know if you saw Game 6.
Onions.
It was wild, and it's so the Mavericks were down by as much as 17 in Game 6. They came back, took their first lead late in the fourth quarter since they were up 42-41 early in the first half. They took their first lead then. Your boy P.J. Washington, who was scoreless, I believe, all the way up to like this point in the game, is fouled on a 3. Correct call, by the way.
That was the correct call.
Very interesting. They said that if he had gotten him after the release of the ball, it would not have been a foul because he hit the ball first, but because because Washington double clutched, that allowed his arm to get hit as he was releasing it, even though ball was first, which then made it a foul, which I thought was a really interesting thing. So it was the exact correct call. So don't cry me a river over there in Oklahoma. But 2.5 seconds left, gets on the line. And like the boy said, onions, to struggle offensively as much as you did, and you're on the foul line down by 1 point, needing to hit these free throws to win, to advance. And he goes and sinks the first 2 to go up by 1 is amazing. And he purposefully missed the third one because there's so little time left. Didn't want to give them a chance to advance the ball at all. Misses that one on purpose. Clock runs out and they advance. And
free throws were an issue for Dallas in that series. So for him to step up,
and I think for him too, right? Didn't he have? I think he struggled. Yeah. So that is pretty awesome. To like the boy, you love saying this. You define the moment, or the moment defines you. PJ Washington stepped up huge in that Game 6, even if his stat line doesn't show it, and nailed the winning free throws to advance to the Western Conference Finals, where the Mavericks will take on my Minnesota Timberwolves, who were able to dispatch the defending Larry O'Brien trophy-winning Denver Nuggets in 7 games of a wild series. Minnesota went up 2-0 in that series. Looked like they're going to steamroll Denver, but Denver, with the heart of the champions that they are, with the best player on the planet that they have in Nikola Jokic, ripped off the next 3 games it seemed pretty handily. And it seemed like we're going to watch them just stomp right over the Minnesota, show them, hey, you ain't at our level yet. And then game 6 comes around, and Minnesota, we talked about before in our show last week how Rudy Gobert is going to need to step up his defense, and so will Minnesota. Minnesota's defense was lights out in that game 6. I think Denver only got 70 points in that
yes,
freaking
it was
game.
45-point differential.
Yes, which is nuts. Like that is
the largest defeat of a defending champion in the playoffs in NBA history.
And that's all defense. It's like the commercial. I'm turning into my
defense
parents.
Wins championships.
Defense wins championships. I keep telling people on the street, defense wins championships. Well, it does. And so they were able to force that game 7. And then that game 7, it seemed like Denver was going to have the upper hand. Because watching that game 6 and after game 6, I kind of thought, maybe Denver phoned it in at the end to kind of inflate the egos of Minnesota, to have them think that, oh, we got Denver right here. We got them, only to like kind of surprise attack them. And that's kind of how the first half of game 7 went. Denver was controlling everything, controlling pace, controlling, the defense from Minnesota. They were handling that. And the second half rolled around, and it was a different story. Minnesota mounted a 20-point comeback in the second half. They were able to take out Denver. And in game 6 and 7, Minnesota's defense held the defending champs to a combined 160 points, which is averaging 80 points a game. For a NBA team in a year where we saw historic scoring numbers, to have your defense step up at that moment is absurd and amazing. And the last thing I want to point out is that game 7, you would think if they're going to mount a 20-point comeback, it's all going to be about Anthony Edwards, the Ant-Man, putting on his superhero suit and leading them to victory, but it wasn't. He did not play well in that game. He had a couple big threes, but he overall didn't play that great offensively. Defensively, he's always great. But it was the supporting cast. It was especially Jaden McDaniels, when I highlight him. Defensively, we always knew that he's an elite defender. I think I watched him stuff a poster attempt, and a 6'9", but he's stuffing guys who are half a foot taller than him at times. But he had 23 points in that game 7, and he was phenomenal on both ends of the court. Karl Anthony Towns, 23 points. And I think all 5 starters scored in double digits for Minnesota. Naz Reid, the 6th man of the year for Minnesota, scored in double digits. So it was a pure team effort. And that's how you have to win defensively, is a pure team effort. And I think that, of all things, shows how dangerous Minnesota is, that our guy can be off in the toughest environment you're going to play in the biggest game of the year in a game 7, and we can still crank out a victory and a comeback and hold this other team down, because we have so many different ways that we can win in different weapons. And I think, like I said before, I said Minnesota will win the championship. I'm sticking with Minnesota to win the championship. And that game 7 showed me why.
Yeah, I have a couple things to add to it too. Anthony Edwards, while he struggled offensively, especially in the first half, they were trapping him, double teaming him, forcing him to get rid of the ball. So your role players, your secondary scorers are going to have to step up. And something Anthony Edwards does, which is why he's great, and it's something that the great players do, is that how do you impact the game when you're off scoring? You don't have to always be impacting the game offensively. He said, I need to shut down Jamal Murray. Murray in the first half, I think, scored 27 or something like that. He ended the game with 35. Anthony Edwards completely shut him down in the second half, which was huge in that game. Naz Reid was everywhere. He was phenomenal. And then you look at Denver's side. Jokic and Jamal Murray put up numbers. Jokic was off shooting threes, but he still put up points, put up numbers. However, their role players were awful. I usually love watching role players, seeing what guys do that aren't the stars. What do they do to impact the game? How do the glue guys really get you going, especially to play in championships? They were bad.
No one was sniffing double digits.
They were awful
on the Nuggets.
Porter Jr. I mean, make a shot. I'm sorry, make a shot. Braun was very good defensively, but he's only going to play sparingly and give you some hard minutes. He's not going to score. Their secondary and tertiary guys were really, really bad. and Minnesota stepped up. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say we talked about it last week, where we talked about 3-point percentages and just the tiniest difference being so impactful in the playoffs. Minnesota shot 10 for 34 from 3-point land. Denver shot 8 of 33 from three.
Either of those is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those think about if Denver had made 2 more. The game's completely different, right?
Yeah, I mean Jokic at that point. I was shocked watching that with Jokic. I mean, it was almost like daring him to take the 3. And I expected the best player in the world to shoot 4 of 8 when you're wide open like that, when it's a set 3 with no one in your face. But maybe it's one of those things where he needs the guy in his face. You kind of, when you're shooting a wide open 3, it's actually almost more difficult. It's like a receiver catching the wide open pass when you kind of you're getting your head a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe he needed that. I don't know. For him to go 2 of 8 was pretty bad on those shots.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think part of that is you're not in rhythm, right? In shooters, as you know, boy, as a shooter, you need rhythm, crave rhythm and routine.
Yeah, it looked like he was just flat-footed. It was like, well, I'm open, I might as well shoot it. Instead of shooting to make it, he was just shooting to shoot it.
I've read and seen stuff where sometimes the defense takes that strategy of, instead of me sprinting to close out, let me, he's wide open. Let me stop. Let me see what happens. Let me see what he does. Make him shoot it and make him think about shooting, that psychology of the game. Whereas if I close out, everyone knows he's going to pull the trigger to shoot it. And it makes an easy read for him. Oh, he's either going to pull it or pump and go around. Whereas if I take 2 steps and I stop, now I've made him think. And once you get someone thinking, regardless of sport, you've now won. So it is that weird kind of paradox of...
Right. I just thought guys at that level, I almost thought it didn't matter.
Practice that, yeah.
Yeah, I almost thought it didn't matter. For me, as a shooter in high school, that mattered. But when you're at this level, I was like, it's an open 3. He's got to make it. But it's shooting. It's at the end of the day.
But they're still human, right? And that's why we watch sports. Is we're not watching a simulation on a computer. We're watching humans carry out, the greatest soap opera of all time on the court. So just to recap, playoff-wise, hockey, we got Rangers, Panthers, Stars, Oilers, and then we have in the NBA, Celtics, Pacers, T-Wolves, Mavs. Anything that we missed before we move on from the playoffs?
No, I'm good.
No, I don't think so.
Nope, just that we're going to play Frank's Dead Air.
I thought we answered pretty punctually.
Oh, where are you now, Komlo? I just gave you 3 seconds there. Come on. All right. No, wrong one. Oh. Thank you. Yeah. That's why we show up and do this. God.
Frank Reynolds.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Frank. Moving on to baseball. All right. First one, this is for you, Komlo. Baltimore Orioles. They extended that's the Baltimore accent, which is a thing.
Jesus.
Which is a thing.
Don't do it anymore.
No, you don't want it.
We could just talk about Gunnar Henderson real quick.
Now, the Orioles, they extended their sweepless streak. So they haven't been swept in a series for 106 consecutive series. That dates back to, when Adley Rutschman was called up in May of 2022. Their last time they were swept was at Detroit in May of 2022. Aforementioned Adley Rutschman, superstar catcher for the O's, his walk-off 2-run bomb against the Blue Jays on Wednesday extended that streak to 105, and then they went on to not get swept in their next series to make it 106, which is kind of wild to your
so special.
Stros and Natty Bows, baby. Next, I've got the Yankees, my Yankees. They're the first AL team to 30 wins. They have the second best record in the league, still behind the Philadelphia Phillies. And in their series against the Twins this past week, they allowed a leadoff homer to start the series and then held the Twins scoreless for the next 26 innings of the entire series. So Minnesota hit a leadoff homer and then didn't score the rest of the series, which is wild. And we're finally starting to see Judge heat up, like blistering. He's just mashing it, Snail.
All right.
Really is. Then our boy Paul Skeens, we talked about last week, he had his second start. Both have been against the Cubs. And,
What?
Oh, nothing. Just getting noises. Just getting noises in my ear. Something.
Well, producer talking to you in your ear?
Yes.
Is that what the problem is?
Yeah.
Anyway, Paul Skeens.
Yes, Paul Skeens struck out the first 7 Cubs he faced in his second start. He retired the first 13 that he faced. Struck out 11 overall over the course of 6 innings, 100 pitches, and did not allow a hit. 6 no-hit innings. His only base runner was a 5th inning walk.
Yeah, you know what's really impressive, too, about that is that he just made a start against his team, against the Cubs. Usually what happens is a team makes an adjustment and you get touched up a little bit. Like you don't have as much of a dominant performance. He actually had a pregame interview where the reporter asked him about that, and he said, "Go ahead and make adjustments and good luck." And then comes out and just fires 100 on his 100th pitch for his what was it? How many strikeouts did he end up with?
11.
11. Yeah, that was impressive. And I saw that. But he's also much more than just a hard thrower. He's a pitcher. And to be a pitcher at 22 years old and not just a hard thrower is really impressive. His command of his secondary pitches is really, really good.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. And like you said, that the whole thing is, we want to avoid third time through the order in any start. Well, like you said, if you're making back-to-back starts against the team, that you're the first time these guys are facing you, it's the third time through the order,
fourth,
fifth time, right? And to shut these guys down, look even better against them is crazy. Next thing I have is more Cubs. Our boy Shota Imanaga, who is apparently in like some Jepson's Malort-filled rage out there on the mound every time he goes out there, fired his 5th scoreless outing this past week. 7 innings pitched. His ERA got lowered to 0.84 is what his ERA.
It's crazy. He has 5 unearned runs on the year through 9 starts or something.
Gas. Let's talk effortless gas.
Well, he's not even a hard thrower. I think he tops out at 94. He's usually living around 91, 92. But he hides the ball really, really well. I think that's the biggest difficulty against him as of right now. I mean, his stuff, he's locating and But watch his motion next time he's on. If you're able to watch, I don't know how often you're able to watch the Cubs, but next time he pitches, if you can, turn on MLB TV and check out a Cubs game, he hides the ball really, really well. It's one of the later, like you don't see the ball until really, really late, and then it jumps on you. So 92 probably feels like 98.
Or is it the Malorts he's rubbing on the ball before he goes to pitch?
Antifreeze.
Pine tar is a thing of the past.
It's all about Jepson's Malort. But also in that game, the Cubs went on to win 1-0. So Imanaga didn't even get the win. He exited when it was 0-0. But Christopher Morel, who has some of the better swing metrics, like especially when we talk about barrel rate and like hard hit percentages, he had a walk-off single for the Cubs to win 1-0, if you will, in that game. Next thing I got here, heading out to Texas, the defending World Series champions. A lot of people forget that. But they're playing the Angels, the Mike Troutless Angels, so they're kind of like, why are we even watching them? But it's still, this game was a little wild. So the Angels intentionally walked Corey Seager in the 13th inning to load the bases. Right? Understandable, right? Corey Seager's freaking stud, multiple-time World Series champion, World Series MVP, all that stuff. They load the bases to pitch to Nate Lowe, who's a really good hitter. Then they proceed to plunk Nate Lowe on the first pitch for a walk-off hit-by-pitch in the 13th inning.
Love it.
Yep, that was,
that's baseball, baby.
Yeah, it's baseball, baby.
Give him a hot dog.
I got all kinds of numbers. So that was that was a little crazy to watch and fun to see. Any other baseball things before we move on?
Yeah, Devers on my Red Sox. The Red Sox are 500. I think they've been playing a little bit better, but Devers has caught fire. He's hit a home run in 6 straight games.
Isn't that franchise record for
yes,
for Boston? Not even Boss Hogg did that.
Not even Boss Hogs. May rest in peace,
boss?
Yep. He's doing it to honor his memory. And then I have Kyle Tucker continues to be one of the most underrated players that, for some reason, no one talks about this guy. He averages basically 30 and 100 every year. Got a rocket for an arm.
30 steals as well. Don't forget
30 steals, yeah. He plays on a team that's always in championship series, but for some reason we never want to highlight Kyle Tucker. He went 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts with green cleats, changed his cleats, proceeded to hit 2 straight home runs.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I saw that. Komlo, anything for your Orioles?
We're not gonna. No one's gonna bring up Gunnar Henderson and his.
I was waiting for you.
His 4-game home run streak.
Gunnar, I hardly know her.
You want to talk about dudes that are just mashing it? This dude is just mashing it, and I think like outside of like how special it is to see somebody in a Baltimore Orioles uniform do this.
You say the word special, that goes in quotation marks.
It's special. It's special. What Gunnar Henderson is doing is special. He's leading the league in home runs.
As a shortstop.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. But I think like expanding the scope of that a little bit, and we're a little ways out, but how hard is that AL shortstop vote going to be? You have Bobby Witt Jr. and Gunnar Henderson. I think are probably going to be your front runners, but I think that's going to be an interesting one.
Well, the Royals fan base always votes in astronomical numbers.
Turns out, yes,
which blows my mind. But yeah,
But Baltimore hasn't really had a reason to turn up and vote. Let's talk about some intangibles here.
I mean, Bobby Witt Jr. is fun to watch, but Gunnar is extremely impressive in the field too. He's making some very, very good plays.
Which was the knock on him last year was fielding wise, that he still had a ways to go. So yep, that's pretty good. I like that. We're done with baseball. That's baseball, baby. Talking baseball. Baby. Next thing I wanted to get into was my UVA Wahoos. This was a viewer request. Shout out to Mike Howard the Duck down in Guatemala, who had a viewer request to highlight the cardiac calves, if you will, or the Wahoos, as they prefer to go by. A couple of wild things that went on over the weekend with them. The first thing I'm going to start with is baseball, UVA baseball. I don't know if either of you saw this, but on Saturday night they were playing Virginia Tech, and they were down 7-0 after 2 innings, then 7-2 in the 7th inning, and they were able to come back in the 7th inning and tie it at 7-7. Move on to the 8th. Tech kind of gets their act together. They go up 8-7 in the 8th, only to have UVA tie it right back again in that aforementioned 8th inning. They go scoreless from the 8th all the way to the 13th inning. So this goes all the way to the 13th, the wee hours of the night, at least if you have a child, because you're talking like 11:30 at this point. And in the 13th inning, Tech goes up again 9-8, only for UVA and Harrison Didewick, the greatly named Harrison Didewick, hit a walk-off 2-run home run in the bottom of the 13th inning to win it for UVA and have them clinch the 4 seed in the ACC tournament, which is huge because the way, like, if we thought the NBA play-in tournament was convoluted and hard to understand, the ACC baseball tournament is even worse. I believe you are in 4 groups of 3. Each team plays each other, so you're playing 2 games. And if you win, if you go 2-0, you advance. But if there's ever a tie of like 1-1, whoever was the higher seed advances. So being the 4 seed versus the 5 seed is a massive advantage because you just have to win 1 game and you move on to the next round. So UVA with that win clinched the 4 seed over Florida State, which was kind of wild and crazy to watch. remember sitting there telling my wife, Jordan, she was like, I gotta go to bed. I was like, oh, it's the 9th inning. You want to watch it? She was like, you don't know when this game's going to be over.
She made the right decision.
You know, you're right. I told her the next day. I was like, yeah, that game ended like 2 hours or so after you went to bed. But another Who's victory right there. The other thing, though, was the UVA men's lacrosse. They were the 6th seed. They're taking on the 3rd seed, Johns Hopkins. Me, Johnny Hopkins, and Sloan Ketterman. And UVA trailed the entire game. Johns Hopkins, who's a fantastic defensive team. A lot of their scores were low scoring this year because of how good they are defensively. But they had UVA's number for 3/4 of that game. Somehow, though, UVA entering the 4th quarter down by 4 goals was able to mount a comeback, tie the game, force overtime. And in overtime, UVA did everything they could to lose the game offensively. A lot of credit goes to Johns Hopkins defense again, one of the best in the country, forcing turnover after turnover. But UVA stood their ground and forced a second overtime. In lacrosse, overtime is just like it is in hockey, where sudden victory, sudden death, one next goal wins, right? So to force a second overtime period, you don't see that very often at all in lacrosse. But they forced that second OT period, and the great Connor Schellenberger capitalizes with the game-winning goal in double overtime for UVA to win 11-10, which was the first lead of the game they took, was them winning the game. And that advanced them to the Final Four, where they will take on Maryland, the always tough Terrapins, in the Final Four. The other Final Four is Notre Dame versus Denver for the men's side. So I thought that was worth mentioning, and give a little love to our Wahoos over there in Charlottesville. Ooh-wee. Anything else?
Nope.
No. All right. Got a couple last things to add, because we kind of mentioned some of these things before. I thought it was worth talking about. First, we talked about Baltimore. Well, the Orioles weren't the only show in town. This weekend, the Preakness at Pimlico Raceway, the 149th Preakness happened over the weekend. Seize the Gray won the Preakness. And what's cool about Seize the Gray is owned by like 2,500 people, because there's this website where you can essentially buy shares of ownership into these horses for like $80, $100. You become like a 0.08% owner of this horse. So all these people owned like 0.08% of the horse. And so you get some money from it. You get like $200, but it's about
crowdsourcing horses.
Yes. Oh, I think our show should purchase a horse.
This sounds like something.
Is this like
Stevie and AJ cooked up?
No, I think
we did try to do this a few years back. We knew someone who was raising horses, and you could, we almost bought, studs, and
yes,
we were very, very close to purchasing a horse.
But I think our show should buy a horse, and we could have a show horse, because you get other perks. Like, it's not just the monetary value. Like, they'll send you videos of the horse training. They'll invite you to go out to the stables and like meet the trainers and watch the horse. At the events, you will get to go to like the winner's circle, and like,
is this like the equivalent of like
a jockey?
Yeah, Jesus. Is this like the equivalent of people owning the Green Bay Packers?
Yes, yeah, that's basically what it is.
Wrexham,
right? You're owning a little share of it, and I think let's go pick a horse. Maybe a nice filly will do.
I need a horse.
Yep.
Thank you,
and we'll get to and maybe we can pick a horse that might race in some of the racetracks that aren't that far, because there are a few races I think that happen in Virginia.
Colonial Downs, right?
Foxfield.
Yep.
And I think there's one up in Northern Virginia. But maybe I think we should. I think it would be cool. Your boy AJ, who's already funneling so much money into other gambling affairs. What's another Jepson's filled betting rage where he'll just help us purchase a share in this horse and go to the track, the OTB, and bet on the pony when it's in Saratoga, right?
Maybe he can be our guest next week and talk horse investments.
Yes. Horse investments, of course. But Seize the Gray, the crowd-sourced.
We're gonna bump. Shota to bring in AJ.
Yep.
Well, yeah. I mean, Lowry canceled after Nick called him fat, so leaves an opening for AJ and his horse ejaculate professionalism.
Yes. Yep. Just thought we should have that as part of our show going forward. Is that we own a horse with AJ as our principal. He's our man on the field. He's our reporter we send to the track with wearing some ridiculous hat with tickets coming out of it. I think that's
our resident gambler.
Yes, that's our next step. Elsewhere, the soccer world or football, as you will, our Bayer Leverkusen that we talked about before, they became the first team to go unbeaten in a Bundesliga campaign, which is ridiculous considering the sheer dominance that Bayern Munich has held over that league forever. It seems like that they never accomplished this feat to never lose a game the whole year. They're the 7th unbeaten champion in Europe's top 5 leagues. So we watched history over the weekend to see them pull that off. Other history-wise, over in England, Manchester City claimed their 4th consecutive Premier League title with a 3-1 win over West Ham. Arsenal wasn't enough to overtake them on points-wise, even though they won 2-1 against Everton. City still able to claim that title. And Pep, as we talked about, Pep Guardiola doing things that can't be done. You've got Erling Haaland out there. Like, how you're supposed to stop this Viking who, is chugging beer with Thor on his days off. But Man City winning their 4th consecutive Premier League title. Pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And last but not least, our girl Nelly Korda, she won again, shocker, at the Mizuho Americas Open in Jersey City. She won by 1 stroke over Australian Hannah Green for her 6th win in 7 events. Her 6 wins makes her the first player since Inbee Park in 2013 to win 6 times in an entire season. So she literally has the rest of the season to break that mark, which is amazing. Now, hey, nothing's guaranteed in sports, nothing's guaranteed in life, so this may be it, but she's on such a heater that you got to think she may shatter some more records this year. It's kind of amazing. Anything we missed before we get to our favorites this week?
No.
Nope.
No? Really? No. That's all I get? Did you have the dead air queued up so I can sit here for a second? You can play it.
Yeah, sure. Thumb through your notes real quick.
Thumbing. Oh, thank you, Frank. Thank you, Frank.
Saying thumbing doesn't mean the air is dead, a-hole.
It's useless airtime. Okay. Fine. We'll go on to our favorite segment. As always, each week we try to highlight our favorites from a certain category, right? Like last week we talked about our favorite unsung heroes of the playoffs. And as we like to remind people that this is our favorite. So we're not saying like, oh, these are who we think are the best of all time at this. We're not saying, oh, these are the best goalies of all time. These are just our favorites as fans, as people who, have spent so much time tuned into the sports and, love to watch the drama and the soap opera that is competition. These are the guys that we think are our favorites that we've gotten to watch. Similar to how you get a favorite actor, right? Or that you like to go see their stuff. So this week for our segment, we turn to the world of basketball for our favorite shooters, right? And, we talked about this, can be at any level. So you could have picked some guy who was a great shooter in college, never really panned out in the NBA. You could have picked anyone you wanted as your favorite shooters. So who wants to get us started?
I'll start this one.
Boy,
as something
our resident shooter,
near and dear to my heart, being a shooter. I'm going to start number 5 as my favorites. Steph Curry. He's the greatest of all time for shooting. He jumped off the page at Davidson in March Madness. That was the first time you saw him, and at that point, people thought his name was Steven, and then you realize it's Stephen. And he's actually ruined.
A blow to PH.
Yes, the PH Stevens, like me and Komlo. Now that every time someone sees our name, they go Stefan.
Did you know that he changed that on his own, like as a kid? Like he didn't like being Steven was his name. He didn't like it, so he wanted to be different and went by Stefan. Yeah,
body bagged us.
Yes.
Anyway, love Steph Curry. Especially at Davidson, and then obviously what he's done in his NBA career, being the greatest shooter of all time. Number 4 is someone that I don't even know if Nick, you know this guy. but he was the best shooter I ever saw in person play. Was on the Baylor Bears.
I know who you're saying. Yep.
Brady Heslip.
Yep.
You couldn't give an inch. He was awesome. Got into, I believe, the G League. He's Canadian. I think he's played on the Canadian national team. He was a guy that anytime you left him open for a second, it was like it's automatic. I thought he was a lot of fun to watch, even against my Mountaineers. Number 3, Kyle Korver, the Ashton Kutcher lookalike. Kyle Korver, very, very good. I feel like he was just standing in a corner. Anytime I think LeBron would throw him a pass, be like, "Yep, that's good." Number 2, maybe the best college shooter of all time. Had a pretty good career in the NBA. JJ Redick. As much as I disliked Duke and the JJ Redick teams because they were good, JJ Redick was phenomenal, and even his free throw shooting, just automatic. And number 1, Klay Thompson. He is the perfect form fundamental shooter. If you want to learn how to shoot a basketball, watch Klay Thompson shoot.
He's the best catch and shoot shooter of all time.
Yeah, he scored 60 points in a game, dribbling the ball 9 times or something.
Yep.
Yeah. So if kids out there, if you want to learn how to shoot a basketball, watch Klay Thompson shoot.
Yep. I love it.
Nice.
Komlo?
All right, I got an honorable mention this week, so I'll go 5-1, then honorable mention. Number 5, Ray Allen. Goes without saying, Ray Allen, guy was automatic, right? How many games have we seen Ray Allen clutch up from the corner in his career? Number 4, Reggie Miller. I'm a big Reggie Aloysius Miller fan. Yep, yeah, the choking to Spike Lee, that was awesome. Reggie Miller, he's one of my all-time favorites.
And going to the strip club with Spike and Kramer.
I didn't know Cheryl Miller's little brother played basketball.
Love Reggie Aloysius Miller. Number 3, Steph Curry. Goes without saying, I think he's the greatest to do it in the professional setting. From 3, the guy doesn't stop moving, and then when he gets the ball, he's automatic. There's just no shortage of weapons at his disposal. Number 2, JJ Redick. Nice. JJ Redick, and I specifically, like Stevie, wanted to highlight his campaign and career at Duke. He's making headlines now because apparently for some reason he's a front runner for Lakers head coach.
Because he's such a great analyst. He sees
which is crazy.
effortlessly and things that other people don't see.
He's apparently people are already comparing him to like Pat Riley, which I think is kind of bonkers. Like, let's get the guy on the bench first, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. JJ Redick, one of the best collegiate assassins of all time. Number 1, cleanest stroke in the game, Klay Thompson. Stevie, our lists are so similar. Yeah, Klay Thompson. Some say he's the Stephen Komlo of in the pros.
No one's ever said that.
No, a lot of people say that.
Iceman.
Clean stroke.
Make it rain.
I 100% endorse Stevie's advice. If anyone wants to learn how to shoot a 3 or wants to do a shot change, whatever, look at Klay. I mean, it's just so clean. It's perfect. And then honorable mention, I'm going to throw out James Harden just because I really enjoy watching him play because he's a guy that loves the contact and will purposely drive into defenders to generate that contact. And then depending on what you give him, he's either going to blow by you and take you to the rim, or he's going to push off Euro step and just embarrass you. I mean, I think there was a solid stretch like a couple of years ago where I think more ESPN like top 10s that I saw had James Harden step back, guys breaking their ankles, falling down, and then burying the shot. I think he's a quiet assassin when you talk about guys who can shoot. I think James Harden deserves to be somewhat in that conversation. But yeah, that's my list. I'll hang up and listen.
Oh, thank you, Komlo. You guys are gonna hate me when I go through this because this is gonna be a lot of head slappers. But I'm gonna start off.
How many? Let's start.
Well,
there.
yeah.
How many
Is
do we
it
have?
under 7?
You're just gonna have to. You're just gonna have to sit.
Jeez.
You're just
I
gonna have to
noticed
hang
you
up and
stretched
listen.
and started showing the 41 on your jersey. Is this a 41 person list?
You're gonna have to hang up and listen for this one. I'm gonna start with some honorable mentions of Sean Marion and Kevin Martin.
No.
Yes.
Sean Marion should be nowhere near this list. That is just a disgrace.
Boy, I prefaced this. Favorites. These are my favorite shooters, and somehow
shooter is a very loose term. Then come on.
He was a fairly effective 3-point shooter, and to shoot like this, like a little kid, and to be that good,
He shot a chest pass.
Yes, and Kevin Martin had a over the top kind of weird crooked shot. So I had
it's like putting Craig Counsell as one of your favorite players because of his stance.
Why can't you put Craig Counsell? He has a walk-off. He has a World Series.
Putting Craig Counsell as one of your favorite power hitters because of his stance. I wouldn't put Sean Marion as a shooter.
Doesn't matter. Favorite shooters: Sean Marion, Kevin Martin. I had to reference them. But in terms of my list, my number 5 that I had on here was Brook Lopez. And the reason I highlight him is because he entered the NBA probably never shooting a jump shot at the collegiate level. Right, he was a big, dominant big man at Stanford, but he reinvented himself, especially as he aged in the NBA. And he is one of the most efficient 3-point shooters in the NBA. He is a true weapon behind the arc, and he is really good. And I love it. I love that progression, that adjustment, that attention to being a professional that took to make that and become a great 3-point shooter that Brook Lopez is at 7 feet tall. Next, I had JJ Redick. Do we need to go into more about him? It's kind of telling that he stood out. He's like one of the first people that growing up you noticed as a shooter, as a great shooter, and not just a guy we're going to chuck the ball, but because he was also such an effective scorer. And it was like, circle this guy on the game plan. We have to stop him, and you couldn't. But one thing I'll point out about him that I love him and why I put him on this list, because of how good he was as a shooter, and he was able to parlay that, coupling with the NBA CBA on how much of the percentage of the salary cap each team has to use. He had 1 year where he signed a 1-year, $23 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers just to be a veteran shooter because they had to take up that space. He just wins. It just wins in life for that. 1 year, $23 million. Next on my list, I have Joey Hoops, Joe Harris from
UVA.
Joe Harris was the first one to defeat Steph Curry in a 3-point shooting contest. He beat him at that All-Star 3-point shooting contest, which is amazing. He was, I think, led the league 1 year in 3-point percentage. At UVA, he was obviously a great shooter, but because of like the roster construction and everything that was going on, he wasn't like a guy who was just going to sit there and spot up from 3. He was a great scorer, dropped, I think, 36 and an upset victory over Duke at one point. And you don't do that just by shooting only threes. He was such a great scorer. But in the NBA, he, again, kind of reinvented his game and made himself into one of the best shooters that there's been around in the NBA the last kind of 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Next, because of my jersey, I have Dirk. And Dirk Nowitzki on there, like we talked about him last week, or when we were talking about the big men 2 weeks ago. And he kind of revolutionized what you would think of in terms of big man shooting, because it used to be that you were forbidden to shoot if you were over X, inches tall. But Dirk, and especially with his great, not just his 3-point shooting, but his turnaround jumper that is unstoppable to guard, that fadeaway is a thing of beauty, right? And this just doesn't have to be 3-point shooters, right? It's just shooters in general. So Dirk's on there for that. Is just, pleasure to watch him shoot and score. And number 1, I have Reggie Miller for 3. Reggie, like you said, Reggie Miller, he was at least the first, in my mind, first 3-point shooter to utilize the 3-point line as a weapon and to make that a part of the game, because we forget that the 3-point line wasn't always there. And it really hasn't been around that long in terms of like the overall, history of the game of basketball. But Reggie Miller felt like was the first person to utilize that as a true weapon of like, we've got to guard him out there. Whereas, it's very commonplace now is you want to run guys off the 3-point line. Before it was we're going to stay back and we're going to let everyone shoot. But Reggie Miller felt like he was the first one that you got to get out to him. He is the shooter. He's the poster child for what shooting is and how to shoot and how to run offense around movement without the ball and catching and shooting. That wasn't as prevalent until Reggie came around. So that's what I had. I also, shout out to Bob Lee Swagger and Shooter McGavin, favorite shooters. Shooter.
Oh, Mark. Bob Lee Swagger.
I told you weren't going to handle it. You weren't ready for this.
Listen to what I say.
Just me. Maybe I'll eat some hay and lay by the bay.
Stay out of my way. Listen to what I say.
Just looking for the other half of this bottle, and there's some over there. Any thoughts for the people?
Yeah, I'll throw one more honorable mention for the shooters because as we were going through the list, Jimmer Fredette.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't have him, boy.
As I was going through the list, I was like,
one.
I should have put in Jimmer. I'll put him as an honorable mention. The Stormin' Mormon from BYU.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Komlo, before we wrap this debacle up.
No, I got nothing.
No? You're thinking of what are we going to edit out of this before we go?
It's too much work.
It's
too much
there.
work. That seems like too much work.
Final thoughts for me. I mean, I think it was really special having Nathan on. I hope that we didn't scare him off, and I hope that he enjoyed being here because I wouldn't mind having him come on for future golf events. I think it adds a little something extra. That was fun. But no, good pod, boys.
Yep, I love it. One thing to watch for before we close out the show, in this next week, it's the biggest weekend for auto racing. On the calendar, you have Monaco for F1, you have the Indy 500, and then you have the Coca-Cola 600. And Kyle Larson is attempting to do the Indy Coca-Cola double. He's qualified 5th for the Indy 500, which is remarkable because he's a full-time NASCAR driver. And he'll also hope to that night after running the Indy 500 to do well in the Coca-Cola 600, which is normally in Charlotte. So
and
one thing
hopefully Kyle Busch gets punched in the face again.
Yes, one could only hope. That's going to do it for us over here at What Caught My Eye. Again, thank you to everyone out there who's watching and listening. Big thanks to Nate the Great Bursack for coming onto our show, breaking down some of that golf we saw over the weekend. As always, follow us on our socials at WCME_sports on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter. Visit us on our website, WCMEsports.com. Our new episodes drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify and on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all those great things. We love hearing from you guys. We love the feedback that we get from everyone each week. As always, for the boy, Stephen Vesci, for the man, Stephen Komlo, I'm the coach, Nick Vesci. Be decent to each other. Have a good one. So long, Guatemala, and we will see you next time.
Dead air.